How to make tofu using your tofu mold. First, rinse your 2 cups of dry soybeans. Fill with cold water and cover with a cloth to soak for anywhere between 8 to 12 hours. Once soaked, wash until the water runs clear. You'll know the beans are fully soaked when they look like edamame, and they can split into 2 halves when you squeeze them between your fingers. To fully wash, I usually need to wash and strain mine 3 times. And once you're done washing, you can set up your blender. To process all the soybeans, you may need to split the blending and straining up into multiple batches. For the size of my blender, I do it in 2 separate batches. Add your soybeans to the blender with a proportionate amount of water. So for half the soybeans, I try to fit in 4 cups of water to hit that 8-cup mark. Then prepare your straining setup. Place a colander on top of a large stock pot. Dip in your cheesecloth with water, and for the first cheesecloth, fold it over twice such that it's a 4-layered square. For your second cheesecloth, place it on top as a single layer. You then turn it into a 2-layer cheesecloth through folding the corners in. Make sure that the edges of these corners slightly overlap, just so you can avoid having any areas that are only one single layer of cheesecloth. Carefully pour in your mixture. Make sure that none of the sides of the cheesecloth fold in as you do so. Then, very carefully, gather all edges of the cheesecloth, not just the corners. The idea is to create a sealed cheesecloth bag of sorts. That way, when you squeeze the cheesecloth, the soy milk will be forced to strain through the cheesecloth, and the mixture will not be able to escape through the top. You could use a nut milk bag for this part, but I found that the weave was too tight on nut milk bags and was too difficult on my wrists. You'll know you're done straining when the liquid that strains out is creamy and the pulp is starting to push out of the cheesecloth. If you're straining in multiple batches, to move on to the next batch, you can set this first cheesecloth back down on your straining setup, carefully unfold it, take the fibrous pulp out, known as okara, and keep it. You can use it in other recipes. It's super high in dietary fiber and a great addition to plant-based recipes like vegan meatballs and vegan brownies. You don't have to get all the okara out of the cheesecloth before your next round of straining. Just try to get all the big chunks out to make this next round easier. And repeat this process as many times as you need. After fully straining the second half, I set aside the cheesecloth with all of the okara in it, and I move on to straining the bottom layer. The second layer catches any last okara that came through from the first straining process. It's okay if some okara gets into your soy milk, it doesn't change the texture of your tofu significantly. Once you're done with the second cheesecloth, you can set everything aside and add in the additional 8 cups of water to your soy milk. Soy milk is not edible until you bring it to a boil and cook it. Do not try it before then. Turn the heat up to start, and once it reaches a boil, turn it down to simmer for 10 to 15 minutes. Keep an eye on the pot while you're waiting for it to boil, because when it does, it foams up very rapidly and will quickly spill over the edge. It's actually happened to me this time, unfortunately. You'll need to remove it from the heat and stir so the foam goes back down. This time you can prepare your coagulant. Here I'm using liquid nigari, which is included in the tofu making kit. I measured out 1 tablespoon of nigari and I put it into about 2/3 cup of warm water. I stir it in and it's ready to go. Now it's time to coagulate the soy milk into tofu curds. So you move your pot off the heat and let it sit for a moment. You'll see here that some skin is formed. It's called yuba and it's very tasty. I tend to leave it and let it be incorporated into my tofu. I add the coagulant in 3 parts, stirring in a Z shape each time in between, just to spread the coagulant gently throughout. The most important point here is to not overstir, otherwise you risk breaking up the curds. Now there are some areas on the edge where the liquid is still cloudy and has yet to coagulate, so I very gently press down to allow the clear liquid to run in, and that seems to help coagulate that area. As it's coagulating, you can prepare your straining setup. Use a baking pan or wide base plate with sides that can catch the liquid that you strain out of your tofu. Place your tofu mold inside and line with a damp cheesecloth. Now that the tofu curds are separated from the liquid, you are ready to transfer them into your tofu mold. Here is the process where you can customize the firmness of your tofu. So today I'm making kind of a medium firm tofu, so I'm grabbing a large bunch of curds all at once and pressing the water out of it somewhat. I then very carefully place it into the mold since I don't want to break up the curds too much, and I pack it down to fill it in and reduce the number of air pockets. To create a firm or extra firm tofu, pick up less curds when you scoop with the sieve and press out as much water as you can. Essentially, the more water you press out, the firmer your tofu will be. For the last little bit, I very carefully pour the remaining liquid out through the sieve over the sink. and then I scoop anything else that's left in the pot into the mold. I compress it one last time with a spatula, and then I fold over the cheesecloth. Here I'm folding over just 3 corners because the cheesecloth is already pretty thick from being folded in 4 layers. I add the press on top, and then I pour out the excess water that came in when I was transferring the curds from the pot into the mold. Place a sauce jar or can on top to help weigh it down. Now it's been 3 hours and it's ready to take out of the mold. Gently remove it from the cheesecloth and place it into a bowl of cold water. This helps give the tofu a bit more firmness and draws out any strong flavors from the coagulant. It only needs to sit in the cold water bath for 10 to 15 minutes, and then you're good to go. You have your homemade tofu. So with this one, I did lose a little bit of soy milk when it boiled over while I was cooking it, but the yield still came out to almost 1.5 pounds from those 2 cups of dry soybeans. Of course, the weight will vary depending on the firmness, because if you remove more water for a firmer tofu, it will likely weigh slightly less. Anyway, so many wonderful ways to use this freshly homemade tofu, and it's so good. I honestly just eat it raw sometimes. You can check out my website, thetofustop.com, to restock any ingredients or pick up another tofu mold for you or a friend. It's all organic and essentially 0 plastic. Each time you make homemade tofu, that's 1 less plastic container in a landfill. Better for you, your taste buds, and the earth.